It was one of those nights where exhaustion settles into your bones, you know? The kind where all you can think about is collapsing onto your bed and shutting the world out for a few hours. I'd just finished pulling a double shift at the campus library, reorganizing the entire science section because someone thought it would be funny to mess up the cataloging system. My back ached. My eyes burned from staring at tiny call numbers, and honestly, I just wanted silence. But the moment I turned the key in my apartment door, I knew silence wasn't on the menu tonight. The living room was packed. Well, packed for our tiny two-bedroom apartment anyway. There were maybe 6 or 7 people sprawled across our beaten-up couch and scattered on the floor, textbooks and laptops everywhere, energy drink cans forming a small pyramid on the coffee table. My roommate, let's call him Tom, had apparently decided tonight was perfect for an impromptu study session. Again, Tom was like that. The guy could make friends with a brick wall if he tried hard enough. Always had people over, always organizing something, always in the middle of some social gathering. Complete opposite of me, really. I preferred my own company, a good book, and maybe some quiet music. But Tom and I worked well together because of our differences, I guess. He pushed me out of my comfort zone sometimes, even when I didn't want to be pushed. "Hey, you're back," Tom called out from somewhere in the chaos. "We're just going over the chemistry material for next week's exam. You want in?" I shook my head, managing a tired smile. "Nah, I'm good. You guys carry on." That's when I noticed her. She was sitting in the corner of the room, cross-legged on the floor with her back against the wall. I'd seen her around campus. Before, mostly in the organic chemistry lectures we both attended. She always sat 3 rows ahead of me, always arrived exactly 5 minutes early, always had her notes color-coded and perfect. The kind of student who seemed to have everything figured out. The type who never looked stressed, never looked uncertain, just glided through college like it was all part of some master plan. We'd never really talked. Maybe a polite nod in passing, maybe a brief "excuse me" when squeezing past each other in the lecture hall. That was it. So seeing her here, in my apartment, surrounded by Tom's usual crowd, felt strange. Out of place somehow. She glanced up at me for just a second, and I caught something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Then she looked back down at her textbook, and I figured I was probably just imagining things. Exhaustion does that to you sometimes. I grabbed a glass of water from the kitchen and retreated to my bedroom, leaving the door slightly open out of courtesy. The muffled sounds of their study session drifted in, a comfortable background noise of pages turning and occasional laughter. I scrolled through my phone mindlessly, trying to decide if I had enough energy to shower or if I'd just deal with it in the morning. About an hour passed. Maybe more. I'd started to doze off when I heard the sounds of people packing up, saying their goodbyes, chairs scraping against the floor. The study session was wrapping up. Thank goodness. Maybe I'd actually get some sleep tonight. I heard Tom talking to someone near the door. "You sure you don't want me to walk you to your dorm? It's pretty late." "No, I'm fine. My roommate's picking me up. She should be here any minute." It was her voice. Calm, assured, the way she always sounded in class when answering the professor's questions. More goodbyes. The door opening and closing, then opening and closing again. The apartment gradually quieted down until it was just the usual nighttime sounds of a building full of college students trying to pretend they weren't stressed about exams and future plans. I was about to get up and brush my teeth when Tom knocked on my doorframe. "Hey man, I'm heading out to stay at my girlfriend's place tonight. Early breakfast plans tomorrow. You good here?" "Yeah, all good. Have fun. Oh, and just so you know, that girl from your chemistry class is still in the living room. Said she's waiting for her ride. I felt weird just leaving her, but she insisted she's fine. Can you just, make sure she gets out okay?" I nodded, already feeling a bit awkward about the situation. "Sure. No problem." Tom grabbed his overnight bag and left, and suddenly the apartment felt very quiet. Too quiet. I sat on my bed for a moment, trying to figure out what the protocol was here. Do I go out and make small talk? Do I just stay in my room and give her space? Do I offer her something to drink? Before I could decide, I heard footsteps. Soft, deliberate footsteps coming down the short hallway toward my room. My door was still slightly open from when Tom had knocked. Through the gap, I saw her appear in the doorway. She didn't say anything, didn't knock, didn't ask permission. She just stood there for a second looking at me with an expression I still couldn't quite understand. Then she walked right into my room. My heart jumped. Not out of fear exactly, but out of pure confusion. What was happening? Did she need something? Was something wrong? She walked past my desk, past my bookshelf with its messy collection of textbooks and random novels, and sat down on my bed. Not on the edge, not hesitantly, but right there in the middle, like she'd made a decision and was committing to it. And then she looked at me. I was standing near my closet, frozen in place, trying to process what was going on. Her eyes locked onto mine, steady and unwavering. There was something intense about her gaze, something that made it impossible to look away. It wasn't threatening exactly. It wasn't flirtatious either. It was something else entirely, something that felt like a challenge and a plea at the same time. She didn't say a word, just sat there watching me, waiting for something. For me to react, for me to speak, for me to ask her to leave. I had no idea. The silence stretched between us like a rubber band pulled tight, ready to snap at any moment. My mind raced through possibilities. Was this some kind of weird college prank? Was she in some kind of trouble? Had I missed some social cue earlier in the evening? I finally managed to say, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. Is everything okay? She still didn't answer immediately, just kept looking at me with those eyes that seemed to see right through all the walls I'd carefully built around myself. My exhaustion had completely vanished now, replaced by a nervous energy that made my hands feel restless and my throat feel dry. The whole situation felt surreal, like something out of a movie or a story, not something that happened in real life. Definitely not something that happened to quiet, introverted guys who spent their evenings reorganizing library books. But here we were, her sitting on my bed, eyes locked on mine as if daring me to move. And me, standing there like an idiot, waiting for an explanation that I wasn't sure would ever come. The next morning was awkward in that peculiar way mornings after vulnerable nights always are. I woke up on the couch with a stiff neck and found her in the kitchen, already dressed, looking like she was trying to figure out how to make a quiet exit. "Hey," I said, my voice still rough from sleep. She jumped slightly, then gave me an embarrassed smile. "Hey, I'm sorry about last night. About everything. I shouldn't have just barged into your room like that." "Don't apologize," I said, moving to start the coffee maker. "Seriously. I'm glad you felt like you could talk to someone." She leaned against the counter, looking down at her shoes. "I meant everything I said, but I also realize how intense that must have been for you. Random girl from your class shows up and dumps all her problems on you." "It wasn't like that," I said honestly. "Sometimes we all need someone to listen. And for what it's worth, you helped me too. I haven't talked to anyone about my mom in months." She looked up at me then, and some of the tension left her shoulders. "Really? Really? So, thank you for trusting me with your stuff." We stood there for a moment, the coffee maker gurgling in the background, both of us trying to figure out what comes next after a night like that. "I should probably get your number," she said suddenly. "I mean, if that's okay. In case I need to. I don't know. Talk or something." I handed her my phone. Of course, she typed in her number and handed it back. "I'm going to call the campus counseling center today. You were right last night. I can't keep doing this alone." "That's good. That's really good. What about you?" she asked. "Are you going to talk to someone about your mom?" The question caught me off guard. I'd spent so long being the support system for everyone else that I'd forgotten I might need one too. "Maybe," I said. "Yeah, maybe I should." She smiled, a real, genuine smile that made her look completely different from the composed student I'd seen in chemistry class. "Good. We can keep each other accountable." And that's exactly what happened. What started as one vulnerable night turned into something neither of us expected, an actual friendship. A few days later, she texted me asking if I wanted to study together. Not because either of us needed help with chemistry, but because being around each other felt easier than being alone. We met at the library, and what was supposed to be a 2-hour study session turned into 4 hours of studying, talking, and understanding each other better. She told me more about her dad, how he was always the strong one in the family, the one who never complained, never showed weakness. And now, seeing him scared and sick, it was like the whole world had tilted off its axis. I told her about my mom's good days and bad days, how sometimes she'd call me excited about a new hobby she'd started, and other times she wouldn't answer the phone for a week and I'd be left wondering if she was okay. "It's exhausting, isn't it?" she said one evening as we sat in the mostly empty library. "Loving people who are struggling. You want to fix everything but you can't, and that helplessness just eats at you." "Yeah," I agreed. "And then you feel guilty for being tired, because they're the ones actually going through it." "Exactly," she said, looking relieved that someone understood. 2 weeks after that first night, she asked if I'd drive with her to visit her dad at the hospital. It was a 3-hour drive, and she admitted she was nervous about going alone. "You don't have to," she said quickly. "I know it's a lot to ask. I'll go," I said before she could finish. "When do we leave?" The drive was long and filled with a mix of comfortable silence and deep conversations. She talked about medical school, about her dreams of becoming a pediatric oncologist because of what her family was going through. I talked about my engineering degree, about how I'd chosen it because it seemed practical and secure, but how I'd recently been drawn to sustainable engineering projects that could actually help people. "Why don't you pursue that then?" she asked. "My family expects me to get a corporate job. Good salary, stability, benefits. They need me to be successful so I can help them." "But what do you need?" She glanced over at me from the driver's seat. Nobody had ever asked me that before. What did I need? I'd spent so long thinking about what everyone else needed from me that I'd forgotten to consider my own wants. "I need to feel like what I'm doing matters," I said slowly, "not just financially, but like it's making a real difference." "Then do that," she said simply. "Life's too short to spend it living for everyone else's expectations. Trust me, watching my dad go through this has taught me that." At the hospital, I waited in the cafeteria while she spent time with her family. When she came back 2 hours later, her eyes were red, but she seemed calmer somehow. "Thank you for coming," she said as we walked back to the car. "Just knowing you were there made it easier." "Anytime," I said, and I meant it. Our friendship deepened over the following weeks. We developed this routine where we'd meet 3 times a week, officially to study, but really just to be there for each other. She'd update me on her dad's treatment, and I'd tell her about my mom's latest episodes. We'd quiz each other for exams, but we'd also talk about our fears, our dreams, and all the pressure we felt to be more than we thought we were. She pushed me to apply for an internship with a sustainable energy company, even though it paid less than the corporate offers. "Follow what matters to you," she kept saying. I encouraged her to be honest with her mom about her anxiety, to stop pretending she was handling everything perfectly. "You can't take care of others if you're falling apart inside," I reminded her. One night, sitting on the campus quad under the stars, she turned to me and said, "You know what's funny? I spent months watching you from afar, thinking you had some secret to being okay with everything, and now I know you were struggling just as much as me. Is that disappointing?" I asked. "No," she said thoughtfully. "It's better, because it means we can struggle together, and somehow that makes it all more bearable." She was right. Having someone who understood, who didn't judge, who could sit with you in the mess without trying to fix everything, that was rare. That was valuable. We became each other's lifeline that semester. When she'd have panic attacks, she'd call me and I'd talk her through them. When I felt overwhelmed by family pressure, she'd remind me that I was allowed to have my own path. We celebrated small victories together. Her first counseling session, my acceptance to the sustainable engineering internship, her dad having a good day, my mom calling to say she was proud of me. It wasn't romantic. It was something deeper than that. More solid. It was 2 people seeing each other at their worst and choosing to stay anyway. It was knowing that no matter how heavy the burden got, you weren't carrying it alone anymore. And honestly, that made all the difference. It happened gradually, so slowly that I didn't even notice at first. Somewhere between the late-night study sessions and the long drives to the hospital, somewhere between sharing our deepest fears and celebrating small victories, my feelings started to shift. I realized it one Tuesday afternoon in the library. She was explaining something about molecular structures, completely focused, her hair falling across her face as she leaned over her notes, and I caught myself just watching her. Not the notes, not the diagrams, just her, the way she bit her lip when she was concentrating, the way her eyes lit up when she finally understood a difficult concept. The way she absently tucked that same strand of hair behind her ear every few minutes. My heart did this stupid flutter thing, and I thought, oh no, because falling for your best friend, the person who'd become your anchor, your safe space, your lifeline, that was a terrible idea. That was the kind of thing that ruined everything good you'd built together. So I pushed it down, ignored it, pretended it wasn't there. But feelings don't really work that way, do they? They don't just disappear because you want them to. They grow quietly in the background like weeds in a garden you're trying to maintain. Finals were approaching and the stress was getting to both of us. She was studying for the MCAT while also keeping up with regular classes, visiting her dad every weekend, and trying to manage her anxiety. I was juggling my engineering projects, my part-time job, calls home to check on my mom, and trying to figure out my future. We were both running on fumes, but we had each other, and that felt like enough. Most days. One night, about 3 weeks before finals, we were in my apartment studying. Tom was out, and it was just us, surrounded by textbooks and empty coffee mugs. She was sitting on the floor back against the couch, and I was on the couch above her. I'm exhausted, she said suddenly, closing her book. Not just tired. Exhausted in my bones, you know. I know, I said. She leaned her head back against the couch right next to my leg. Sometimes I wonder if I'm cut out for all this. Medical school, being strong for my family, keeping everything together. You're one of the strongest people I know, I said. And I meant it. She turned her head to look up at me. I don't feel strong. Most days I feel like I'm one bad moment away from completely falling apart. Strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about getting back up after you do. She smiled softly. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just good at pretending. We both laughed at that, and for a moment everything felt perfect. Too perfect. I wanted to reach down and touch her hair, to tell her that somewhere along the way she'd become the most important person in my life. But I didn't, because what if it ruined everything? The next day her dad's condition took a turn for the worse. She called me from the hospital, and I could hear in her voice that she was barely holding it together. Can you come? She asked. I know it's a lot to ask, and you have that big project due. I'm already getting my keys, I said. I drove those 3 hours faster than I probably should have. When I got to the hospital, I found her in the waiting room, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She stood up when she saw me, and without thinking, I pulled her into a hug. She broke down, then really broke down, sobbing into my shoulder while I held her and wished I could take away all her pain. I can't lose him, she whispered. I'm not ready. I'll never be ready. I know, I said. I'm here. Whatever you need. We stayed at the hospital for 2 days. I slept in uncomfortable chairs, brought her terrible cafeteria coffee, and just existed beside her while she dealt with doctor consultations and family conversations. Her mom thanked me for being there, which made me feel like maybe I was doing something right. On the drive back, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I don't know what I'd do without you. My heart jumped. You'll never have to find out. She looked over at me, and there was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Promise? Promise. But here's the thing about promises. Sometimes life has other plans. Finals came and went. I did well on my exams, got good feedback on my engineering project. She crushed the MCAT just like everyone knew she would. We should have been celebrating, but instead everything felt heavy and uncertain. Her dad was declining rapidly. The doctors were saying weeks now, not months, and I was falling deeper in love with her every day, which felt selfish and wrong given everything she was going through. One night, a week after finals ended, we were sitting in my car outside her dorm. We'd just gotten back from another hospital visit, and neither of us wanted to say goodbye yet. I've been thinking, I said carefully. Maybe I should defer my internship. Stay close to campus this summer. Help you with everything going on. She turned to look at me, her expression suddenly guarded. What? No, absolutely not. But you need support. I need you to live your life, she said firmly. That internship is your dream. You're not giving it up for me. It's just a summer. I can do it next year. No. Her voice was sharper than I'd ever heard it. You're not sacrificing your future for my problems. I won't let you do that. They're not just problems. You're going through something terrible, and I want to help. By throwing away your opportunities? That's not help, that's martyrdom, and I don't need it. We'd never argued before. Not really. This felt awful. Why are you being like this? I asked, frustrated. Why won't you let me be there for you? Because I can't be someone else's burden. she said, her voice breaking. Don't you get it? I'm already dragging my family through this nightmare. I'm not dragging you down too. You're not a burden. Yes, I am. Tears were streaming down her face now. Everyone in my life is suffering because of what's happening to my dad, and I can't let you ruin your life trying to save me from mine. That's not what I'm doing. Yes, it is. And I appreciate it, I really do, but I can't accept it. I can't be responsible for you giving up on your dreams. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and painful. I need some space, she said quietly. I think we both do. This is getting too intense, too complicated. You have your life to live, and I have to figure out how to handle mine. So what, we just stop being friends? I asked, my chest tight. No, just some distance. For a little while. Please. I wanted to argue more, to tell her she was wrong, to tell her that I loved her and didn't care about any of it. But I could see how exhausted she was, how much she was carrying, and I realized that pushing her right now would only make things worse. Okay, I said finally, if that's what you need. She nodded, wiped her eyes, and got out of the car without looking back. I sat there for a long time after she left, feeling like I'd just lost something irreplaceable. And maybe I had. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I respected her wish for space, but it felt like losing a part of myself. I'd gotten so used to her presence, her texts, her voice, that the silence was deafening. I threw myself into preparing for the internship, packing up my apartment, saying goodbye to Tom, who was heading home for the summer. But everything felt hollow without her to share it with. 3 days before graduation, I got the news through a mutual friend from our chemistry class. Her father had passed away peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by family. My first instinct was to call her, to drive to her, to be there. But she'd asked for space, and I had to respect that, even though it was killing me. So instead I did something else. I sat down and wrote her a letter. Not a text, not an email, but an actual handwritten letter. I told her everything I'd been holding back. Not about being in love with her. That wasn't what she needed to hear right now. But about how much her friendship had meant to me. About how she'd helped me become a better version of myself. About how she was never ever a burden, and that being there for her wasn't a sacrifice, it was a privilege. I told her about my mom, about a recent conversation where I'd finally been honest about my own struggles, and how that honesty came from learning to be vulnerable with her. I told her she'd taught me that strength and struggle could coexist, that needing help didn't make you weak. I ended the letter by saying that whatever she needed, space, time, distance, or a friend, I'd be there. Always. No conditions, no expectations. I mailed it to her home address and hoped it would reach her at the right time. The funeral was on graduation day. I almost didn't go, worried that showing up uninvited would be overstepping. But something in me knew I needed to be there, even if she never knew it. I stood in the back of the funeral home behind a crowd of family and friends I didn't know. I watched her from a distance, looking small and tired in her black dress, accepting condolences with that same composed mask she used to wear in chemistry class. The mask I now knew was protection, not truth. She didn't see me. I made sure of that. I stayed for the service, left before the reception, and went to my own graduation ceremony feeling like I was going through the motions of someone else's life. Summer passed in a blur. The internship was amazing, everything I'd hoped it would be. I was working on real projects, sustainable energy solutions that could actually make a difference. I should have been thrilled. And I was, mostly. But there was always this hollow space where she used to be. We didn't talk, not once. I'd see her post occasionally on social media, always just generic updates, nothing personal. I never reached out, respecting the boundary she'd set, even though I thought about her every single day. 3 months went by like that. 3 months of moving forward while looking backward. And then, one random Thursday evening in late August, there was a knock on my apartment door. I was living in a new city now, a small place near the company headquarters. Nobody knew my address except my family and Tom. So when I opened the door and saw her standing there, travel-worn and nervous, I thought I might be hallucinating. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi," I managed to say, my brain trying to catch up with reality. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside and she walked into my apartment, looking around at the still mostly empty space. I hadn't had time to decorate much, too focused on work. She turned to face me, and I saw something different in her eyes, something clearer maybe, more settled. "I got your letter," she said. I've read it about 100 times. My heart was pounding. I meant every word. I know. She took a breath. I'm sorry I pushed you away. I'm sorry I made you feel like caring about me was a burden on you. You don't need to apologize. Yes, I do. Let me finish, please. She twisted her hands together, a nervous habit I recognized. When my dad died, I felt like I was drowning, and I kept thinking about what you said, about deferring your internship, and it made me panic, because I realized how much I'd started depending on you, and that terrified me. She walked to my couch and sat down, and I noticed she chose the same position as that first night, sitting right in the middle, like she was claiming space instead of apologizing for taking it. I spent these 3 months in therapy, real intensive therapy, working through my anxiety, my fear of being a burden, all of it, and my therapist asked me something that I couldn't stop thinking about. What was that? I asked, sitting down beside her. She asked me why I thought needing people made me weak, but other people needing me made them human. She looked at me. I didn't have an answer. I'd spent so long believing I had to be strong for everyone else, that letting anyone be strong for me was somehow failing. But that's not fair, is it? That's not how relationships work. No, I said softly. It's not. You told me in that letter that being there for me was a privilege, not a sacrifice. And I think I finally understand what you meant. Because these 3 months without you, that was harder than anything. Harder than losing my dad. Harder than the grief. Harder than the fear. Because I lost my best friend by trying to protect him from myself. Tears were building in my eyes. You didn't lose me. You could never lose me. I drove 16 hours to get here, she said, a small smile breaking through. I'm starting medical school next week, 3 hours from here. I didn't know that when I applied. But when I found out, I kept thinking about how close that was. How maybe it was the universe giving me a chance to fix what I broke. You didn't break anything, I said. I hurt you, I hurt us. And I'm sorry. She reached out and took my hand. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if we can go back to what we had, or if too much has changed. But I needed you to know that you were right. About everything. You're not a burden to me. You never were. You're the person who saw me when I couldn't see myself. I squeezed her hand. You did the same for me. We sat there for a long moment, just holding hands, both of us crying a little. Both of us healing a little. I don't want space anymore, she said finally. I want my best friend back. If he'll have me. Always, I said. I told you I'd be here, whatever you needed. I meant that. She smiled, really smiled, and suddenly it felt like I could breathe properly again for the first time in months. We talked for hours that night, catching up on everything we'd missed. She told me about her dad's final days, about the grief support group she'd joined, about starting medical school and being terrified and excited all at once. I told her about the internship, about the projects I was working on, about how I'd finally had a real conversation with my mom about getting her better help. We made a plan. She'd text me every day, even if it was just something small. We'd video call once a week, no matter how busy we got. We'd visit each other when we could, maintaining the friendship that had become the foundation of both our lives. Were there still feelings there? Yeah, of course. On my end, definitely, and maybe on hers too. But we didn't talk about that. Some things need time. Some things need healing first. What mattered was that we were here, together again, two people who'd found each other at exactly the right moment and refused to let go, even when it would have been easier to walk away. 5 years later, I stood at the front of a small ceremony watching my best friend prepare to give a speech as my best woman at my wedding. She'd finished medical school, started her residency in pediatric oncology, and become one of the most important people in my life. And sometimes late at night I still think about that moment when she sat on my bed, eyes locked on mine as if daring me to move. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I found not just a friend, but a person who would walk beside me through everything life threw at us. Some people come into your life like storms, turning everything upside down. She came into mine like an anchor, keeping me grounded when I didn't even know I was drifting. And that made all the difference.